everybody, and welcome to another episode of Two Comma Coffee Club. I am here with my co-hosts, Lene and Valerie. And today, we're going to be talking about whether or not you are coming from a state of a control freak or a pleaser. And no one can discuss this better than our Valerie, who has just brought a book out about it. So I'm going to hand over to Valerie so that she can tell us all about it.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Well, the book is called Out of Control, and the subtitle of the book is Tame Your Inner Control Freak, Release the Pleaser, and Claim your real power, your true power. And I had been thinking for some time about, what it means to be a control freak, because gosh knows I have certainly exercised that state in the past. And we often do it with our family, for instance, where we feel we want them to behave in a certain way, or we want, like our partner, our spouse, wanting to fix them. And so we start kind of controlling a little bit about how they look or what their eating habits are like. And it kind of comes under the guise of wanting them to be maybe healthier or do something in a more way that we find more appropriate. But it actually comes under the heading of control. And it can be that constant need to have everything a certain way. And this also shows up in the workplace. You might be working for someone who's a control freak. They're micromanaging all the time, hovering over things. There's a certain lack of confidence and a lack of trust in the people around you. There's actually a lot of insecurity behind it, that if you're not controlling, that it can even be a fear that something's going to go wrong. It comes back to things that Lene has talked about to do with anxiety, really, because these things are very interrelated on different levels and different amounts and degrees at different times. But where you talk about like the what ifers that get in the way of manifesting, and Lene means by like, well, what if this turns out this way, or what if it's this? So you keep thinking of all these things that could go wrong, and then you're worried about trying to that you're not enough in control of your situation or your environment, or you try to be more controlled about your eating habits. And then you berate yourself when you're finding that it's difficult and feeling guilty or feeling very negative, or that you are letting yourself down or letting somebody else down, or in some way where you are trying to control, say, the way you're eating. It's something that radiates out it's like an octopus. It's got just so many tentacles that go out into your life in different ways, in different degrees, in different times. So as I was starting to write the book, it came to me, though, that there's another side to this. And the flip side of it is the pleaser state. And that goes in the opposite direction. So in the pleaser state, because you're always trying to gain the approval or the favor of somebody, it could be your partner, your boyfriend or girlfriend, it could be your coworker, your neighbor, your boss, that your own needs, you'll sacrifice all that. You think you're trying to cultivate maybe humility or some other quality.
You would say yes instead of no. So you'd say yes to please somebody, and then it'd eat you up inside because really you mean no.
That's right. And so you find where you might be controlling in one other area, it's almost like you're compensating for all the ways you're giving it up in another area.
Yes.
So you can be a controller and a pleaser.
Totally. It seems like they're really, how could this be? How
They're
could
two
this be?
sides
But
of the coin.
they are two sides of the coin.
Okay.
They are two sides of the coin, because it's just the polar opposites. It's the poles of that consciousness, so that because you're trying to be a pleaser in one area, you might feel you have to be controlling a certain thing to please the person. You see, that also
comes under the anxiety umbrella, doesn't it? Like, totally.
It falls right back into the anxiety umbrella.
Actually, to me, if you're one or the other, then you're totally walking on eggshells all the time, because you don't know where you're at. And actually, having control means you have absolutely none, because you're trying to force something.
So if you remember when I talked about anxiety, the people who think they're in control, so like we would use the example of someone yelling at their children, they're trying to control the situation. To the outsider looking in, they would call that person out of control for yelling and losing it, right? So we would say that person's out of control, but that person feels they're in control. What you're actually in control of is your reaction. So if you were to sit back and be calm with your children, listening, communicating, not yelling, you are controlling your reaction to whatever the situation. That's actually being in control. So the out of control, the control that the control freak has is an illusion. They're not actually in control.
That's exactly right. It's an illusion of control, and because after a while it can get very exhausting and frustrating trying to be in control. And when you're in a certain managerial position at work, you kind of toe a fine line between because you're in a position where you have to report on how well things are going to your bosses, to the higher management. And feel that you're responsible for the people under you. But the best way to do that is really to be in a way that is not controlling, that you can be firm about how you need things done, but at the same time, not micromanaging, hovering, or controlling. Yeah. So, in fact, our friend, Dr. Rose Lawrence, who we've had on, when she was doing her boot camp, she was suggesting even that micromanaging is like a fear of, in a sense, loneliness, a fear of abandonment. If by trying to hold everything together with control, the way we micromanage our kids or micromanage our partner or a coworker, that there is a fear that if we're not tightly holding everything together, we will be left behind or abandoned in some way.
In my last marriage, my ex-husband, he was an alcoholic, and I have realized since reading your book that actually I was the controller of everything, because I felt the need to try and control and manage him, to try and keep him on the straight and narrow. And so actually I used to pull the reins tight, and that would in effect make him drink or react exactly the way I expected him to. Not only did I imagine that he would behave that way, but I used to try and have control. And I recall saying to you that there was a circumstance when I was pregnant with my first child, and I found that in the bag to the hospital were cans of lager. I thought that I was doing the right thing, and I tipped them all down the sink, which was really ridiculous. That was my way of control.
Yeah.
And actually, I had totally lost control. I mean, let's get real. He just went and bought more
Yeah.
and got angry at me for doing it
Mhm.
and reacted badly. I had absolutely zero control. And when I look back at my relationship, there were so many incidents like it. I mean, so many, it was ridiculous.
It's the
And
frustration, right?
I was totally out of my depth. I was totally out of control. There was no way I could control that issue at all.
It's very frustrating. It's the frustration that leads us to take these more extreme actions and believe it's controlling. But the image that's coming to my mind, this is very visceral, is very tactile. Imagine you have a stick of butter, and the stick of butter has been sitting out in the room for a while, still wrapped up. But you want, and then you go to pick. You ever pick up a stick of butter, or that you have left out because you were making dinner or something, and you go to put it back, and you know what that butter does in your hand if you grab it too tight? It just goes like a squishy.
Squelches through. It's so soft.
It's a squish. That's what that's really like. You're trying to grab this squishy thing that you can't. But in the end, you can't, because the state that the consciousness that you're holding thinks it can do this.
Hell, I used to ring him all the time whenever he left the house because I didn't trust what he was doing. I would ring him all the time. And I remember he was actually at my parents' house. And I didn't trust that that's where he would be. He was, but I didn't. But because of his track record, I didn't believe that that's where he would remain and do the job he was supposed to do, because I thought he would leave and go to the pub. Anyway, I phoned him several times, and my dad actually said to me, Jesus, Shell, do you ring him all the time like that? And actually, it was only my way of trying to make sure that he knew I was there, that he wasn't, so that he knew he had. To me, I wanted him to know that he had somebody to come home to and that he didn't need to go drinking all the time. But actually, it was me yet again trying to totally control the situation.
And then you manifest him doing what?
Going and drinking at the pub.
Yeah.
So and this is what I'm saying. I realized so many things.
But that's right, because you're as we know as Neville teaches, it's the imaginal experience leads the physical. So a lot of the time where you have been imagining, fear that imagining, oh, what is he doing? That it could actually have, in its own way, pushed him to go even more to the pub.
Of course it did.
It has to.
Of course it did. No one to blame but self.
No,
there is nothing else. It was totally. I get it. I totally get all of it.
That's right. So controlling people, another aspect of that is people who are only nice to you when they want something. And they'll come to you and they'll ask for, and they'll get all sweet, but if you normally try to interact with them, they don't have anything to do with you. So, it's kind of like, think of a cat, it's like, when the cat is hungry, it'll kind of start coming up to you, making all nice, and climbing around your legs and going all purr, and the whole thing. And then after it eats, all it wants is to go off, and wash its face and take a poop or whatever a cat wants to do at that point. Take a nap, go to sleep, limula. It's like you go to pet the cat, limula. So it's kind of that same thing. So we find that attitude in someone who's nice. Now, if we're a pleaser, even though we have a kind of that intuitive sense that person is using us to meet their own ends of control, because we're nice and we're being a pleaser, we do what they say, because we're somehow we don't find it in ourselves to say, no, I can't. That, and so part of being a pleaser is that you end up taking on a lot. As part of that is there was a book by this title, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. And that was a best-selling book in its time, because it was about that. You can't say no to anything. You're always wanting to be, because the feeling is they'll like me more if I always say yes. So you end up going along with things you don't particularly want to do, but because you want to be a pleaser, you know, you have this fear of either being left out or not being recognized, or, you know, thought you're not making an effort or whatever it is. But that's also behind of the mentality or the state of being a pleaser. And a lot of times you end up doing things and you don't feel that good about yourself after, you know, sometimes it's a good thing, but a lot of times it's not, because you felt that you were, you know, you just get more and more burdened by taking on more than you really want to.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe that's,
yeah, I think there's also behind being a pleaser, there's a feeling of obligation, isn't there? Because if you don't do it, then that you feel that you're not up to par, or that you're not good enough. There is it's as if you feel like there are expectations on your shoulders, where actually it's you that's put the expectation on your shoulders.
Exactly. So when we sometimes put these almost impossible standards on ourselves, because we think if we're not meeting those, that we're not giving enough. So we're always on this kind of treadmill about that we keep feeling, oh no, I should do more, you know, and for whatever reason, but we're just making it really harder on ourselves. And then part of the thing of being in control too is some people who want to be in control, they don't want to ask for help. You know, there's a whole thing about, you know, that a lot of women typically want to feel that they can do all of it, whatever it is, you know, and yet there's a part that is very much yearning to have support, maybe in the form of a loving partner who picks up the slack on some things that they just can't do. Or, you know, a helper or something, assistance of some kind. But the attitude of control is more like, by the time I could explain it to you, I could have done it myself. But but then what? Then you still got all the other stuff you got to do. All the other shit's still sitting there in the big pile waiting for you to get to it. And you still can't get to it because that part of you won't give over.
So I actually, I don't know if I saw a meme or an article or whatever, but it said today's people pleasers were once the parent pleasers.
There you go. Very interesting.
So, you know, think about childhood. Those are the first people that you tried to please, because when you pleased your parents, what did you get from your parents? You got attention, positive attention. Maybe in a toxic, abusive parental roles or experiences, that's the only way the child felt loved by the parent, was by doing something that the parent desired and pleasing them. And so you can see how that can become a state they step into and live that out to where they're an adult, and now they do it to their boss. Now they do it to their coworkers. Now they do it to everybody, where they're just pleasing, and leave zero left in their cup for themselves.
I've got to say, my kids only clean their room to please me. They definitely only clean their room to please me. Definitely.
Yeah. And in some cases where one of the parents is more like emotionally needy, the demand placed on the child, and it's very rough, especially if it's an only child.
Yes. Right. And it's you did this to me, you made me feel this way. And so the child just more and more and more and more, oh, I have to please this person more and more.
Yeah. Oh, don't cry. Oh, please don't cry. What do you want me to do? You know, so when they start doing, that's their control, that kind of, they may not consciously realizing that it's a form of controlling behavior, but to use, you know, a certain attitude, a certain, could be crying, it could be sulking, it could be going stone cold, that kind of thing. And you're just, oh no, please don't leave me alone like that, and you feel bad that they're doing
that. Aim to please, because if you think about it, every stepping stone they're rewarded. We're like, when they take their first steps, going, yeah, come on, and we speak to them in a totally different tone of voice, don't we? And so it's like they want to meet that response all the time.
Yeah.
So either then does it go one of two ways, being a double-edged sword? They grow up and they totally rebel.
Right.
Or they become total pleasers. I mean, how does that work out?
Well, right.
I think it can vary person to person. I know from my experience, my grandma doesn't watch this show, so that's good. But I've expressed to you guys things with her. And so having her live here has been very triggering in the, oh my gosh, I feel like a child again thing, circumstances and stuff, because I'd be like, I have to remind myself I'm a fucking adult. Like, why do I feel this way? That people pleasing or parent pleasing, right? Because she will do that. She will do things. And it reminds me of being a child and feeling like love will be cut off if I do not comply. But then I did the rebelling, right? So I rebelled as a teenager, but I still, like, when called out on my rebellious behavior, which was just me being a teenager, I would feel awful. And then what is my go-to? What am I going to do now? I'm going to do everything you ask me. I am going to try to.
Now she lives with you as a result.
Yeah. And now I can see that pleasing coming out. It's not as much. And I've caught myself, but I would just be like, what in the hell am I doing? Like, I am almost 32 years old. I have my own damn children. Like, why am I acting like this? It's really weird. And it's almost like it
but
into my experience for me to fucking like process this. Like, you're going to look at it and you're going to see it and you're going to move away from it.
Right. Because you're going to keep returning to it all the time. That's your dwelling place, like it or not, until you catch it and you change it. And that's where, Neville, and I quote Neville regularly throughout the book, is that he talks about your mental conversation. So this is the thing you do seek to control. This is, in other words, forget the external control. It's inside. And it's when you get still, know I am God, and you get into that state and you can do the state akin to sleep, or you just get quiet, then you start to look at your inner conversations. Mm-hmm. And that's the area where the true shift starts to come. If you realize that being a control freak isn't serving you, because a lot of people know intrinsically that being a control freak or being a pleaser is not helping them.
Yeah, and they'll readily admit it. Oh, I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
Now what?
Exactly.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, so what? But then some people like saying, "Oh, I'm a control freak around my health, or I'm going to the gym, or And there's a playful aspect to it, no question. And that's not, we all like to say it. It's almost like a badge, what are some of the badges we love to wear? I don't get enough sleep. I go to the gym. I love the gym, whatever it is, but we have all these, I'm crazy busy, it's like all the ones we like to wear. And, but really it's going within, it's pruning the vine. It's taking a look at your relationships. And I'm talking about some of, Neville's tools here, using revision, or any of the other tools that Neville offers to, make these changes to shift what your predominant state is and have more awareness around if you find yourself falling back into that state. So those other things. Now, one area, and I'm not, saying it's any, this is a more sensitive area too, but using sex is a huge control area for a lot of people. As we know, we see it in movies, we live it, we experience it. And someone saying, where one wants it and the other one withholds it, or where one, and I'm not talking about where it's a playful aspect of control.
Right.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about seriously.
That's consensual. This is
consensual.
We're talking about consensually.
Yes. And I wanted to make the distinction where we're not talking about consensual fun things. I'm talking about this, and
it can
this
also
is
be used in a relationship as a reward. So if you like, they've got to do stuff in the day and you go, if you're good, we'll see what there is tonight. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Something like along those lines. Totally.
Yes.
Totally. Sex is used as a control and as a pleaser throughout relationships all the time, and people don't realize this.
Yes, this is exactly right. And one of the reasons that comes up is because, and the relationship psychotherapist Esther, she pronounced, I think, Esther Perel, who became very famous for her book Mating in Captivity. As she talks about relationships, that we expect the one person to be available to us, to be a helper, a breadwinner, a co-parent, and then at the same time be erotic, alluring, and sexy, and provide a wonderful experience in bed. And it's all laid on one person, because in other cultures, in other times, it was not. The wife had certain functions, the lover had certain, everything had a particular function in certain cultures and in certain levels of the social hierarchy. It can get very, very specific. But in our culture, in our time now, we expect that same person to be all these things, and your soulmate,
Yes.
Soulmate never meant what it means today.
So we're typically in society today, it all lands on the woman.
And it still all lands on the woman. Yes, for the most part, so it's the old story of, the husband's been at work all day and he wants attention, and the wife has maybe been with the kids all day. So the needs can be very different. She may want to go out, but he may want to be exhausted because he may be exhausted because he's been at work and does not want to go anywhere, especially if he travels a lot. In the other extreme, you have where the wife is too exhausted by the end of the day, but the husband wants to play. So you also have, if there's tension, emotional tension, someone's going to be saying, not tonight, I have a headache. It's going to be happening that way too. So there's all of that aspect of control. So that's yet another place where it plays in. And again, you have to go back and look at what your primary state is. Is it loving, happy, loving wife or husband? Is it that? And what is the thing that really makes that happen? Hearing them come home at night, or having a meal for them and you both shared and it was delicious, that kind of thing. So you want to come back to that. Now, in doing something wonderful and seeing them happy or wanting them to be happy, that is not that kind of pleaser. Pleaser has that little desperate edge. To remember, pleaser state always has a little bit of desperation, and if you want, I'll do this instead because you want this. Yes. I will torture myself and beat myself up to make it happen, but I will do this because it's for you. Yes. So there's also a little guilt tripping, and then there's a little guilt tripping at the end. So yeah,
the other person who you're trying to please may not even be requesting these things. It just comes from the state of the pleaser, that they feel that they should in order to make that person happy, and then their relationship will be happy. But actually it makes it totally fall apart, because the person that's trying to please is exhausted trying to please, and the other person isn't understanding where the pleaser, what state the pleaser's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. They don't understand what state the pleasure is coming from. So,
and then they don't get it, because what I'm saying is it's a miscommunication, because they're trying to please, and then they get disheartened that the person didn't want that, or, oh, I didn't really want that for dinner. And then they get really angry and really upset and feel a total failure.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that the dinner's been made for, say the guy, I've made dinner for the guy, he really said, oh, I really don't fancy that tonight. And you think, what? And then you get really angry, really frustrated, and then it totally affects your relationship, because you haven't communicated, and it's all because of the expectation of pleasing them that you've put on yourself. It's had nothing to do with them, but you get the ump with them because they didn't like it, but they never asked for it.
Exactly, you know, or it's finally your husband's going to, you know, have supper ready for you because you really needed him because you're working late, and you come home and it's pizza, and you go, oh, fuck, you know, I've been on the keto diet for like, you know, I'm paleo. What are you trying to do to me? You know, and he didn't think about that. All he was thinking about was, you know, getting a nice supper on the table, you know, and sometimes there's, you know, and so you have, you know, you roll, you know, it's like drop all that stuff, you know, drop it for 5 minutes. It won't kill you. You know, it's like, just, you know, allow that. It's communication. You know, maybe there was a breakdown. Okay, maybe there wasn't time. So they grabbed something, they grabbed that thing, pizza, great idea. Let's do it. And, you know, but even if that's not your idea of the kind of meal you wanted, but it was offered, you know, and trying to help you. So, and, you know, because otherwise everything that you do, if you're trying to be a pleaser, you know, it's like, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve this imagined idea of what you think somebody would make them happy, you know, but it's seeing them happy and, you know, and playing with that and being in that loving, happy, you know, being in the state of loving, happy husband or wife. So, you know, so this is the whole other thing. And I mean, you can roll this all the way out to why people are ghosted all the time when they're trying to meet someone on, you know, through a dating app. And, you know, all of these other relationships that just don't seem to click for people. So what is the state they're coming from? You know, they can take a look at that. And, you know, when they're wondering why it's not working out. So, you know, a lot of ramifications around it. I only outline a few things, you know. It's like how do I feel when I'm being the cop on certain things, the health cop or the food cop or the travel cop or whatever it is, and other areas that you know, where you're being controlling or trying to be a pleaser. How do you feel when you're doing it? How do you feel when you're not? You know, and the whole purpose of the book was not to write a lengthy, very lengthy book about it, but to maybe there'll be a follow-up at some point, but to start to engage people in thinking about it and looking at their state and letting me know. You know, I love people to comment, and that could, you know, open something up for a future companion book to it. But you know, but that is the key thing. And it was very surprising to me when I discovered, you know, that these two seemingly very opposite areas are really very connected. And, you know, everybody has that. So it's, you know, because all of it has to do with what is your identity? What is your self-concept? And this is really what it all comes back to. How do you feel you need to be? Do you need to be that controlling to be on point and at the top of your game? all the time? Is that what it is for you? You know, is there another way you can be with it? You know, do you feel only that your life is functioning when you're pleasing people? Because yes, you're trying, I know, you know, you feel like you're trying to make the best for others, but what does it do for you at the end of the day, especially if people don't relate to what you're trying to do? So that is the key with that.
You see that a lot in, well, I'm bringing up toxic relationships again, but in an abusive marriage or something, you know, you have your control freak, you have your pleaser. Normally the pleaser is the one who's getting hurt, you know, whether that's physically, mentally, whatever. And it's because of that. And you can see how it becomes a cycle: control, please, right? So they're controlling this person and that person pleases them. And then, you know, it's just this ongoing cycle, and you have to like get off the cycle. And I always say, if it's a relationship like that, getting off the cycle is getting the hell out of there, you know.
Get out.
Get out.
Yeah.
You know,
Just get out and then find your state. Just get out first.
Yeah, like this is not the time to figure out your self-concept. Well, what am I doing? What is it? No, move. Get out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
exactly.
It's the same thing. You just get on this like crazy cycle. Is really what you call it.
So, when you're in that toxic relationship, of an abusive relationship, even though you're the pleaser, you try to cling on to something you can control, like I did when I'm pouring away the lager down the sink. So there's the controller and the pleaser cycle going on within yourself at exactly the same time, of you coming from a state of being a victim and always trying to please them, so that there's this sort of, you just don't want to rock the boat. And so but what you're doing is you're exactly rocking the boat, because one minute you're a controller and the next you're a pleaser. And so for me, it felt like I was totally rocking on the waves without any sense of direction.
The seesaw. You're just boom, boom, yo-yo, boom, 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 boom. You know?
Totally. And it's so easy for me to see it now. But like you said, Lene, when you're in some form of an abusive relationship, you've got to get out in order to see it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the seesaw will just keep going until somebody gets off and they don't want to pay no more.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think there was a song a number of years ago. It was a very popular song. I think it was a country song, and the opening line is, "I do anything for you, but you're not here." So, you know, the whole thing always makes, why is she so needy? You know, it's like, get a life. But of course, there could be a situation where
there's that Meatloaf song, isn't there? That I'll do anything for you, but I won't do that.
But I won't do that.
Yeah.
Song, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, so it makes you wonder, you know, what is the level of is she with a narcissist? Is this an abusive relationship? Is the person really just throwing her over? Or is she just imagining, because she's so needy herself,
that it's pushing that person away? You know, maybe they're just like, I cannot, like, this forceful, like, needy, I gotta do this for you. You know, that can really drain.
Yeah.
Of course it can.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really, you know, so the place in that is to say, you know, as the, if there being that there is no secondary cause that if you have this displaced need to please, turn it back to yourself. Mm-hmm. Because it's not selfish. You know, we're really raised to believe that if we put ourselves first in a lot of ways, and we all can address this, you know, we all can speak to this, is that it's selfish. It's somehow selfish, you know. But I used to say to my husband, you know, if my ship goes down, everybody, you know, you, the cats, everything, you know. So it's like, I do need to take care of my health. my nutrition. I have to keep that strong,
Yeah.
in order to be able to be of some assistance or whatever, in the household and share life with you. So it's, it's something we really have to look at because it is, you can't serve two masters, and what pleases God is what pleases you, because you are God. Your awareness of being is God. So you want to do, now you can say, well, it makes me happy to please other people. But if it brings you to a point of sort of being desperate about it, then you have to really take a look at how you're engaging on that and what you're telling yourself.
Or being a complete pushover. Like, that doesn't feel good. Is that what you want to be? Is a pushover? Where you are that pleasing for people that they just steamroll right over you, and expect a lot from you where they give this much, right?
Well, back in the early part of the last century, in the 20th century, there was a famous artist, Pablo Picasso, and Picasso, he had many wives, girlfriends, and mistresses, and he was famous for having said, there are two kinds of women, goddesses. There are goddesses and there are doormats. And so where you're talking about the pushover who's desperate, who will allow you to, walk all over her, it's a doormat mentality. So you want to see yourself as the queen, the goddess, look what happened with our, our wonderful, we call her the manifesting queen, Anya Amke, and who was on with us not long ago. And
on a Never Got Out Summit, wasn't she with us?
And she was definitely with us on the summit, and she's got her own workshop coming up too on love. And how she talked about, when she started thinking about her own desires, how she wanted to be treated in a relationship.
Cat's tail.
Within like weeks or days, everything turned around for her. And in the span of, it's so amazing when you think of 3 months or something, I think she had met her love, right? And he asked her to marry him. He moved in with her. They're going to get married, and they traveled together. And it's everything that she wanted when she started to see it as her being adored and cherished. And the same thing with our friend Alessandra Rossi Filippi, the singer who was on with us, and how she manifested her relationship with Grant, with her man.
Absolutely. Do you know, since coming out of my marriage, I've then taken on the state of fiercely independent single mum. And that's the badge I've worn for years now. And only actually I'm starting to come out of that, because there is a side of me that is after a relationship. And I desire to be loved, because I'm at that point where I want that now. But I've got to take that badge off. And actually, that's a part of me that's been, I'm controlling that image, if you like, that state of independent single mum. And a lot of people are saying, oh my God, how do you do all of what you do when you're single and you're on your own? How do you manage? And actually, if I look, that gave me some form of gratification, and that encouraged me to continue being single, strong, and independent, because hey, I can do all of it. And just, I can do all of it. But the point is now is that I've realized that I don't desire to be that anymore. So now I'm gradually moving and shifting, because I'm letting go of that control.
See, that's exactly right. It's very similar. I don't know if you saw this was one of our friend David Breslow's posts, and David was on. He's coming back. I know that'll talk with us again soon. But he has said, he's written about this in his post where he's, had a client, say a woman comes to him as a client for coaching, and she'll say, I want to be married, I want to have a wonderful man. He says, but if you're identifying as independent,
exactly, you're seeing yourself as independent, so what are you going to be? Independent on your own, doing things.
I think that's why I'm not married yet. Funny, Chase and I have been together for it'll be 6 years in August, and we were engaged for 2 years and then called off the engagement because it wasn't going anywhere. Like, we were just never going to get married, like we could not get a date or anything. Right. And so I said, fuck it. I'm taking the ring off. We're done with this. We're just going to continue as we are. And then we did break up there for a while, but yeah, it's like, well, no shit. I went from an abusive relationship where I was the doormat. Okay. So then I get out of that. I find my freedom. I find my, oh, hell, I'm a single mom. I'm an independent woman. Don't need no man. All that other stuff.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, I like this guy. So I would, Chase and I got into a relationship, but I was still that I'm an independent woman. Don't need no man, and so I'm engaged. And I'm still the independent woman, single mom, right? I still claim myself as a single mom because I wasn't married. And financially, I handled the kids' stuff. He handled the house bills and all that other stuff, but we still kept finances separate. And like, it's 2021 and we still live in the house and still keep our finances separate. Like, I can see now how I went from the extreme, like doormat to can't touch, like that. Oh, bless his little heart. Yeah, like it only makes sense now. Like, marriage is that's not a state that I'm in. My state is I'm an independent woman who's in a partnership, raising children together. But I'm not in a marriage, right?
Yeah. It's because you need to surrender the controller and the pleaser, because like me, you were the pleaser for so long that now you've totally flipped to the other side and you control every aspect of your life because you're independent, you're strong, right. You're single, you can do it all. You don't need no man. And now you've got to let that go too.
Yes, that's right. And there's a concept we often overlook. I mean, it's not that you give up your independence, right, to be suddenly dependent, but there's interdependence. Yes, and that's a really lovely state. It's not a bad state at all. Interdependence gives you the best of both, actually, because you're in a more fluid situation. But you're doing things mutually and with mutual goals and mutual desires, and you have a more fluid and flexible way of being together. And sometimes that's hard.
You don't try to manifest the opposite of, like the doormat to the independent woman was my opposite, but you don't necessarily want to go choose a state that's opposite of the state that you're in. You want to find something more that aligned with like, okay, this is actually what I want. Because do you really think I don't want to be married? I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I do desire those things. And so it's me in my own way saying, but I need to be independent woman.
Yeah, I know. I totally get it. I'm there. I'm doing the same.
Which is so cheesy at the same time.
But I know I'm in Facebook dating and I'm talking to guys, so that's a huge step.
But here's the kicker. Free will has nothing to do with it, because as we have learned as students of Neville, is that when you occupy a state and it's manifested, your free will is over. It's all part and parcel of occupying a particular state. So everything goes with that. So if your desire is to have the the marriage bond, if you will, and have that independence within it, or interdependence, that's it. That's what it's going to manifest as whichever way you play it. Because if you want the marriage, but you're always playing the independence card, you have no choice, but that's what you're going to get thrown back at you.
And let's face it, when you are fiercely independent and you're oozing that state of strong independent woman, no guys are going to want to come near you, because they're going to feel like they're not wanted or desired, because they're not needed.
Well, see, this has happened in society already, and this is why we're seeing so many people, a lot of women complain, because the over the years, originally it was because, believe it or not, because of war. So in wartime, I'm talking like World War II or any major war like that, where most of the men were overseas. They were all fighting in far off places. The women, Rosie the Riveter is classic. It's like they had to work in factories and take on jobs that were usually jobs that men had traditionally done while the women stayed home. So that mentality, over the years, as women accelerated more in the workplace and became the breadwinners in a lot of circumstances, or because they were single moms, so that whole there were less and less things that necessarily women needed men to do. So men started feeling emasculated, I think is the word, where that was being taken away from them. Not that they still don't do it or can't earn the money, but they were kind of not wanted for that, so that's why there is that sensitivity around it. But if you're going to always be the independent woman, it's never, then the men will feel there'll be nothing left for him to do. I can't hold a chair for you out, hold out your chair anymore, open a door for you, this or that for you. So what am I to do? I'm not just here just to go to bed with you, but there's something else we've got to have, so that's where that whole controlling and, this is, you got to find what your connection is, your role is, so that's sustainable. And
I can see and I can only speak for myself, but in my experience, I can see that Miss Independent state that I chose stemming from like a trauma response, because in that state, or in this state, I'm not going to attract a misogynistic man. Damn sure.
Exactly.
I want to attract a narcissistic man, because they don't want someone who doesn't need them.
Exactly.
They don't want a woman who's going to make more money than them, or have a career and all of those things, and have her life together. You know what I'm saying? They want someone who's going to be that pleaser, be that submissive woman. And so to go from a relationship like that, I can see why I went that way with it, because I said I will never be in a relationship like that again.
Exactly the same.
And so now I have a sweet man that I'm keeping from us moving forward, like into marriage, because I'm still in that, And so, this is actually very like revealing.
I love this. Right? We're having breakthroughs. I can see our little light bulbs going on.
Oh, he does watch this show. Yeah. I'm sure he's going to hear all this and be like, "Oh, really, Lene?"
Because Chase watches our show, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well, Chase, please can you keep us posted whether or not she loses this state? Let us know when you propose.
There you go. So yeah, it's that whole, that's right. That's why the pendulum is going to go this way. It's going to go this way, until it gets that equilibrium and can allow to let that in. So that's where your inner state, that's where it's so important to know that in your state of saying, I'm the one, I deserve this great relationship. I deserve, and I can let go some of these other things that I've been clinging to that were maybe necessary, or I felt were necessary, imagine were necessary at that time, protectively or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's being able to drop boundaries that are not serving anymore. And the only way you can do that, because all those boundaries get reflected back. Independent woman gets reflected back, or pleaser gets reflected back, and control freak gets reflected back. So all of those get, we see this all the time. So to find that wonderful state of a balanced relationship, or where it's an interdependent relationship, that requires a major overhaul.
Yeah, it totally comes down to how do you identify yourself. That's all it is.
Totally.
How about you, how you identify yourself. And it's about knowing yourself as well, because we go back to living in the end and what your desire is. You've really got to know what it is you want, and then stop putting the excuses and everything else in place so that you can then get your desire, because it's only you that's damaging them.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And I mean, I look at that all the time in myself, because, it means a lot to me. I think my own upbringing, I didn't leave home that early. And, I enjoyed being very independent in my earlier life and career. And having a career is very important, and had a wonderful relationship, which later became marriage, much, much later. But even within that, still kind of hanging on to that aspect. So yeah, there was plenty of control freak stuff going on. And yet there was pleasing and assisting and a whole bunch of stuff. And, and now, after all that settled out, and having been a widow, that's another state, because widow itself is a state, and you can stay in that, as people stay in that state, a widow or widower, for the rest of their life. Yes. Even if the spouse who passed away quite early on in the marriage, or in the middle of the marriage span.
Because they still feel married to that. They can still feel married to that person, because they're coming from the state of being married still.
Exactly. So, after going through that widowhood, then one day I just said, no, that's finished. I'm moving into the next state, but it's still kind of an independent woman state. So I have to examine.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to make this relationship.
We're all doing
this. So I'm willing to, kind of turn this back on myself. You have to
revelation,
play with, and be in the loving wife, or girlfriend state, and just, feeling that even without a specific, I don't want to say specific person, that's a loaded, that's too loaded, but I would say, without a partner at this point. So, and some people they get to that point and decide they don't want to ever partner again, so that's another state that people have to see, where, crazy cat lady or dog lover is the state to stay in. But the main thing of that is in any kind of relationship is really, stepping back and saying, is that why this isn't working? Is that why this isn't working? And then being willing to shift and move out of that state and craft the next one.
Yeah.
So I think we covered quite a lot today.
We sure did.
Before we go, I really want to talk about our new transcripts that people can purchase from the Neville Goddard Summit store that we've got available for you guys. We have done two episodes on living in the end, the key to manifesting, and we spent hours transcribing and editing it. And we've done it for the people that wish to maybe print it off. They can take notes, and they can watch the YouTube video alongside the script, and so that they then have a really clear and better understanding of truly what living in the end is, and that it's only $12 at the moment in the Neville Goddard Summit store. We're still working on our website. We have the lovely Laurel helping us out there behind the scenes. We're going to, but we want to get that right. So for now, they can go to the NevilleGoddardSummit.com store, where they can go and purchase our lovely transcript for just $12. And what I really, really love about it is I would snap it up. If it wasn't mine, I'd snap it up, because I mean, when people will gain such clarity about, we emphasize it all the time, you've got to live in the end, you've got to know what your desire is, but it's getting past that desire and living in the end of it. This transcript tells you exactly what that is and how to do it.
That's right. It's a fantastic transcript. We worked really diligently on making it very readable as a transcript, and clearing out a lot of things in it that would make it harder to follow along. So I know that anybody who gets it is going to get a lot out of it. And all of our, by the way, also, if you're looking for other work by each of us, all our books are in the store as well. So it's a great chance to get a whole bundle of stuff if you want. And send us questions or anything about anything that we have produced. So we always love to respond to that.
Sure. So the title of my book in the Neville Goddard Summit store is Dare to Imagine the No Bullshit Route to Manifesting. And Lene's title is
Anxious No More.
And Val, your other title?
My other title is Banish Money Problems Now, Claim Your Power to Create Wealth. And then the book we've been talking about today, and I want to give you the full title so I don't leave out. It's got a long subtitle, but Out of Control, Tame Your Inner Control Freak, Release the Pleaser, Unleash Your Real Power. So really all of our work is about unleashing your real power, because that applies across the board.
If they bought all three of our books and the transcript, that'd be sorted.
Done and dusted. Yeah, right. True.
Well, ladies, thank you for a very interesting episode today. And I let out some things that I don't think I have before. So that was really good for me. It means I've moved.
Good. Emergent. Cathartic, emergent.
Can you see my screen?
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
so this is everybody else who
this is the website.
Has been in the summit. Yes.
So here's all the books, and here will be our transcripts here. And
where's your course, Lene? You've got a course there somewhere.
Right here.
There it is.
Yep.
Beautiful.
And the books here.
And Lene actually did my book cover, isn't it great? And it was really funny because I kept saying to you, well, let's have a door. And then Lene shows up with this, and butterflies are my most favourite thing in all the world. It was so funny. And I said, how did you know? And she went, well, I'm all you pushed out.
Yes, and Lene did my Out of Control cover as well.
You crazy cat lady. It's totally
right. Exactly. So all of that is there.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye guys. Bye everyone. Thanks for
Bye.
watching. You can watch you can find us at 2coffeeclub@gmail.com if you would like to message us about anything we've discussed. We are very open and we would love to hear from you. And you can find us on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook and Instagram. Right, I'm done. I've said me a bit.